So how many different dice do I use in my LEGO wargame? Well, I've got a D2, a D3, a D4, a D5, a D6, a D7, a D8, a D10, a D12, D14, D16, D18, D20, D22, and D24. Greetings, Realm Lords, COR Bricks here, and today we're going to talk about stats. So let's take a look here. If I open up Prince Jalen de Leon's unit page, we'll see he's got all these icons floating around his picture. He's got these red ones over here on one side, he's got these gray ones over on the other side, and down below he's got like these legs and cross swords and a heart. And these different icons are the different stats that Prince Jalen has. The first stat that we'll talk about isn't really even on this picture. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom of his unit page, we'll see in the bottom right corner there is an icon here. It's this little micro figure. And what that icon is telling us is it's telling us that Prince Jalen is a hero. That means that he can only go during a hero unit command, not a non-hero unit command. It also tells us that if Prince Jalen dies, it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to bring him back onto the battlefield. We're going to have to resurrect him, and for some teams, that can be very, very difficult to do. And for all teams, really, it's quite expensive no matter what. If we look, on the other hand, at our Kingdom Archers, and we scroll all the way down to the bottom of their page, we'll see that they have like this little trio of micro figures. That means that they are non-heroes, so that they can go during non-hero commands, and if they die, we can just train them right back onto the battlefield from whatever building produces them. But if we hop back over to Prince Jalen, let's use him as an example to walk through what all these different stats mean. So we'll start off with this LEGO minifigure fist that's in a red circle. That is the figure's base attack value. So if we take Prince Jalen and we strip him down, we get rid of all his armor, his helmet, his sword, his shield, we just have the figure by itself. The base attack at this point is one of the only stats that matters. Now, base attack is used whenever you are attacking an enemy figure. You're going to roll whatever number you have for that base attack. So since Prince Jalen has a base attack of 4, we're going to roll a 4-sided die and see what happens. Unless otherwise stated by an ability or anything like that, base attack is always rolled no matter what. But of course, Prince Jalen doesn't just stand there with nothing going on in his hand. He starts off with this lovely mithril sword. And that means that Prince Jalen also has a weapon attack. And that's that sword icon on his page. Now, your weapon attack is another number that you're going to roll in addition to the base attack. So realistically, when we are attacking with Prince Jalen, if he's got that mithril sword with him, we're not going to just roll that D4. We're also going to roll an 8-sided die as well. And then whatever number we end up rolling is going to be the strength of our attack. So this is why I have so many different dice in my wargame, but you don't necessarily need all these dice to really play. Keep in mind, if you want to roll a D7, you can just roll an 8-sided die, and every time you roll an 8, you just re-roll it. But I do have a lot of different dice so that I can catch every number basically between 1 and 24 without having to do a lot of re-rolling. Now, it's important to keep in mind that that sword icon also matters. It means something. It tells us that Jalen has a slashing attack type. There are a bunch of different attack types in the Circle of Realms. There's hacking, slashing, piercing, blunt, bludgeoning, elemental, universal, siege. There's probably 1 or 2 more. I'm not quite 100% sure. But here, I'm just going to pull up the table so you guys can see all the different wonderful attack types there. Different attack types are blocked by different armor types, and that's the most important thing to consider when you're looking at the attack type of a figure. But we'll also see in a later video that different attack types can also cause effects like dismemberment if they're rolled effectively. Hey, my friends, if you're enjoying this video, please hit that like button, and if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more about the Circle of Realms, if you want to learn about how we play the rest of this game, because we're not going to get through all of it today. And also don't forget, if you want to look back and go over any of this stuff at your own pace, you can go to my website, circleofrealms.com, and you can read through the rules there and explore different units over there as well. Now, when you're attacking with Prince Jalen or anyone else, there's one other stat you want to keep in mind. It is this red crosshair that appears down below the base attack and the weapon attack. And this crosshair gives us the precision rating of the character. Now, most stats in COR, the higher the better. But precision rating goes the opposite direction. A low precision rating is good, a high precision rating, not so good. And there's a few reasons why. At a base level, no matter whether it's day or night, when you roll an attack, if you roll a multiple of the character's precision rating, then you're going to score a critical hit. And when you score a critical hit, the defender has to cut their defense die in half, round it down, before they even roll. So a critical hit on a guy with a defense of 6 is going to become a defense of 3. And that can be pretty devastating. So if we look at the prince again, his precision rating is 4. So what this means is if we roll a 4, or if we roll an 8, or if we roll that full 12, any of those 3 numbers, then we're going to get a critical hit with Prince Jalen de Leon. So you'll notice then what this means is we can have some really strong critical hits, and we can have some very weak critical hits. But a critical hit can still be very beneficial regardless of where it falls on that spectrum. So you can see how a low precision rating is very favorable. There are some units in the Circle of Realms that have a precision rating of 2, meaning they critical hit half the time basically. Now the other reason why this precision rating is so important is if we return back to that situation where Jalen is fighting at night. Well, at nighttime, we've got 2 extra considerations to keep in mind with precision rating. Thing number 1 is your attack is lowered by your precision rating at night. You subtract the precision rating from either the weapon attack or the base attack, whichever is the higher of the 2. If you still have more to subtract after that, then you eliminate one of your attack types. So you only roll 1 die, and then you continue to subtract from that other die that is remaining. That's very unlikely. Precision ratings typically aren't going to wipe out completely someone's weapon attack, but it's definitely a possibility. If a precision rating will completely take out both of those attacks, then that unit's just not going to be able to deal damage at night. Realistically, that's only going to happen if your figure gets their hands cut off. They don't have a weapon, and they're trying to attack with their bare fists or limbs at nighttime. Now, the last thing about precision rating at night is for the defender. If a defender manages to turn an attack negative against the attacker at night, we are going to subtract the defender's precision rating from the damage that is dealt to the attacker. This can bring damage against an attacker all the way back down to 0, depending on the precision rating of the unit defending or how that defense roll was. Generally speaking, it's just harder to deal damage in the dark. Now, in addition to precision rating, units can also have a range. A range allows units to attack other units from farther away on the battlefield. So Jalen doesn't have a range, which means that he needs to be right in front of whatever unit he is attacking at any given moment. On the other hand, our Kingdom Archers, if you look at them, they've got a range of 5. This means that they can attack any unit that is within 5 spaces of them on the battlefield. Now, if we hop on over to those gray icons on the other side, the gray icons are always going to show a unit's armor. A unit's armor can be a shield, it can be a breastplate, it can be a helmet, it can be a mix of these things as it typically is. Just like attack, there's a bunch of different types of armor. There's one for each different attack type, and the different armor types will automatically block damage from different attack types. So say, for example, Jalen rolls a total of 8 damage on a target he is attacking, but that target has 6 slashing armor. That 6 is going to get subtracted from that 8. He's only going to deal 2 damage overall to that target. So for this reason, it's important to keep in mind the different armor types that your targets have and the different attack types that your units have. Try to get the best combinations. You want to try to attack units that do not have protection against your attack type. Now, most armor has a specific attack type that it blocks, but I'll pull up this table for you so you can see basically all the armors do a little bit more than just the one attack type that they say. Every single armor blocks against siege attack types. So what this means is if someone's safely kind of hurling rocks from a catapult from a good distance away, the odds of it actually hurting figures with armor, it can't deal a ton of damage if the figures have armor against anything. And then on the flip side, universal armor and siege armor both block all attack types. And then there's another armor called martial, and martial armor blocks all physical attack types. Basically everything except elemental and universal attacks. Now, if your unit has a defense, then we're also going to roll a defense die to protect against the attack. And this basically represents your character's ability to evade and kind of parry, riposte against the attacker that is attacking them. Something to keep in mind is that defense can turn attack negative. And when an attack is turned negative in melee combat, then the attacker is actually going to be the one who takes the damage from the attack, not the defender. So units with a high defense can actually hurt their attackers instead of getting hurt themselves during an attack. Now, something to keep in mind if you don't know anything about probability is that the attacker is usually rolling 2 dice, which means that it's going to be much more likely the attacker rolls a number that's kind of somewhere in the middle between what those 2 dice represent, kind of like the average midpoint between those 2 dice. The defender rolls 1 die, which means there's an equal chance that the defender will roll 1 versus their highest number. So defense is a little bit more sporadic, it's unpredictable, whereas attack, there's a little bit more high chance it's going to cluster around the middle of your dice roll. Whoever does end up taking damage during an attack is going to take wounds onto their health. and their health is represented by a heart. The vast majority of non-heroes have a health of 10. Once they get 10 wounds, then they are killed and removed from the game. The same thing is true for heroes, although heroes typically have a lot more than 10 hit points. Jalen, for example, has 25 hit points. Now, the last stat a unit has is its movement. That's pretty straightforward. Jalen has a movement of 4, so he can move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. There are a few things to keep in mind with movement, though. There are some units, like that rowboat that we saw earlier, that actually take up multiple spaces on the battlefield. They're too big to fit on one space. Units like this will have 2 feet specified. Now, this rowboat only takes up 2 spaces, so the front of the rowboat is 1 foot and the back of the rowboat is the other foot. And whenever we're moving a larger unit, whichever foot moves the farthest in a single motion is going to be the foot that we're going to be measuring the movement for. So for example, this would be one move because we only moved 1 space forward with both feet. And this would be one move as well. Even when we turn it like this, if we're just turning it 90 degrees, notice how the front only moved 1 space and the back only moved 1 space. So that's also going to count as 1 space of movement. But if we rotate the boat 180 degrees all the way around, then we'll see that the front of the boat has now moved 2 spaces. So that's going to be 2 spaces of move to rotate the boat completely around. There's one last stat that some units have, and that is mana. Mana is used by units that have spells to cast their spells. Every spell has a certain amount of mana that it consumes, and once that spell is cast, then we subtract that mana from that unit's mana total. Mana regenerates at the rate of 1 mana per player turn. So at the start of each player turn, that unit will recover 1 mana. And this will happen whether you use a unit command on that unit or not. And those are all the main stats in the Circle of Realms. We'll see some other stats as we look at buildings deeper later on, but those are more important when we learn about how buildings operate and function. Next time, we'll look at how you can move units around on the game board because our board is not perfectly flat. It's got some interesting elevation differences in it. So if you're interested in checking that out, make sure you're subscribed. Otherwise, be happy, be healthy, be well, and I'll see you next time here in the Circle of Realms.